And we begin our coverage on this anniversary with the head of the Central Intelligence Agency, John Brennan. Director Brennan, what have we learned in 15 years?
Well, good morning, John. What we've learned is that these groups, whether it was Al-Qaeda or ISIS, can cause much death and destruction as they pursue their mindless agenda. And so what we've learned over the last 15 years is to make sure that we do everything possible as a nation to protect this great homeland and our people around the world as well from the scourge of terrorism. We've done a lot in terms of making sure that the different parts of government are able to work better together, be able to share information, increasing our information technology systems so that we can get the threat information to where it needs to go to so that we can prevent those attacks. We've learned a lot, we've done a lot, and that's why today I believe that it's much more difficult for these groups to carry out the type of attack that they did 15 years ago.
At the CIA now there's a new commemoration of the 9/11 attacks there. What do you want employees at the CIA to think about when they see and remember 9/11 in terms of when they do their job?
Well, on the first floor of CIA we have a flag that was taken from the rubble of World Trade Center towers, as well as a steel girder. And it is in full view of our employees as they go about their daily activities. I want to make sure that they understand that we have a solemn obligation to make sure that we do everything in our power with our full authorities and capabilities around the world to prevent these terrorist groups from carrying out these types of heinous acts of violence and murder. So the agency takes very seriously what our responsibilities and obligations are. And I do believe that CIA has been, I would say, probably the most instrumental agency since 9/11 in degrading, dismantling Al-Qaeda, and making sure that that organization and now ISIS are unable to carry out attacks here in the homeland.
One of the military officer that I talked to about the 9/11 history said one of the things that he thought was that restraint wasn't talked about as much. There's a lot of talk about actions that are taken here to stop this threat or that threat, but sometimes that the actions taken have their own consequences. How much is restraint a part of what we have learned about the response to terrorism?
Well, I think we're very mindful that the actions that we take overseas really need to take into account what the consequences are going to be. We are trying to be as careful as a surgeon's scalpel in terms of taking out the cancer of these terrorist organizations. We have to make sure, though, that we're not going to damage the surrounding tissue. And whether or not we're operating in the Middle East or South Asia or other areas and parts of the world, we have to work, first of all, very closely with the governments, the ones that we're able to work with, but to ensure that it's being done in a careful manner, that we're able to arrest and detain individuals as we can, that we're able to take advantage of whatever material we're able to seize. And this has to be done, I think, in a very deliberate way.
Do drones help or hurt in that effort to be surgical? Because some people say that the drones are a recruitment tool for terrorists.
Well, the drone platform, the Predator platforms that have been in the U.S. military arsenal for quite some time are tremendously capable platforms that can carry out intelligence and surveillance and reconnaissance, the ISR responsibility that we have in terms of collecting intelligence, but also being able to be exceptionally precise as far as putting ordnance on target when that is called for. So they are piloted, it just happens to be remotely piloted.
But in terms of that collateral issue, creating more terrorists, what role do you believe it plays as a recruitment tool for new terrorists?
Well, I think frequently our adversaries will point to it as a recruitment tool, but the facts are that that is an exceptionally powerful and capable means of taking kinetic action against terrorists when that is called for. So I think there's a lot of misrepresentation and mischaracterization that a lot of the propagandists use in terms of how those drones are used.
What's the state of the fight against ISIS right now as you see it?
There's been significant reversal of their battlefield successes over the last 6 to 9 months. We have seen that they've been pushed out of a number of areas inside of Iraq as well as in Syria. A number of their leaders have been removed from the battlefield. They do not have the same type of control over territory that they had this time last year. So this is all part of the strategic effort that has been underway to try to get the intelligence that is necessary in order to give the coalition the opportunity to take strikes from the air, and also make sure that the Iraqi forces and others and the those elements that are fighting on the ground against ISIS are empowered and able to do that.
The argument's been made by the administration that as they lose that territory, the foreign fighters disperse, and that's an even greater threat. Is that right?
Well, they've been dispersed for a while, and one of the things that ISIS has done is to develop these franchises around the world. A lot of these terrorist organizations that have raised the ISIS flag in different parts of Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia, they were already existing terrorist groups, and they tried to jump onto the bandwagon of ISIS. But even those organizations have suffered serious setbacks. When I look at Nigeria, in terms of Islamic State of West Africa, also the heads of these organizations, whether it be in Saudi Arabia, Algeria, and Afghanistan, they have been taken off the battlefield. So progress is being made not just in Iraq and Syria, but also beyond.
Washington Post has a report about the attraction to ISIS is also diminishing, the number of foreign fighters wanting to join the cause. Is that the way you see it? And if so, why is that? Why is recruitment down?
Well, I think initially when it was able to roll across a number of these ungoverned spaces in both Iraq and Syria, that momentum generated quite a bit of attraction, and that's why the foreign fighters were flowing there, because they thought this was a winning organization. It is now a failing organization, and their narrative has been refuted. Their claims of great victory have been debunked. And that's why I think fewer and fewer people now are looking to ISIS as being an organization they want to belong to.
I'd like to switch to ask you about Russia now. Hacking into different parts of the American electoral system. What role is Russia playing in terms of hacking U.S. institutions?
Well, Russia has exceptionally capable and sophisticated cyber capabilities in terms of collection, as well as whatever else it might want to do in that cyber sphere. So we've known this for quite a while. Their intelligence services are quite active around the world. And this is something that we have to make sure that we're on guard for, not just for our national security purposes, but also for making sure that our system of government here is going to be preserved.
They have the potential, but what's the reality? How much are they active?
Well, they're very active worldwide, and I think, as you know, and in the U.S., the FBI is looking into the hacking of the DNC network, the release of these emails. This is criminal activity, and I would defer to the FBI as it continues to look at all of the different forensics as well as intelligence that we might be able to provide the Bureau as well in terms of attribution.
When you think of national security threats, where does Russia fit in that picture?
Well, I think that Russia is a world power, clearly, and they are involved in many different parts of the world. Military capability, they're involved in the Middle East right now, obviously in Ukraine, Central Asia. So Russia is a formidable adversary in a number of areas. Also, there are areas that we need to be able to work with Russia, specifically in Syria. As you know, John Kerry and Foreign Minister Lavrov announced an agreement to try to move forward once again with trying to bring some semblance of peace to Syria. We'll have to see whether or not this time the Russians are going to follow through on their commitments in terms of putting pressure on the Syrian regime.
And Vladimir Putin, a former intelligence agent, how do you read him?
Well, he is somebody who is very aggressive, very assertive, and I think his intelligence background gives him a certain perspective. A lot of the senior Russian officials are also former KGB. And so he is somebody that we need to, I think, be very wary of in terms of his ability to manipulate environments for Russia's advantage.
Is he manipulating the election? Is that an environment you think he's trying to manipulate?
I think that we have to be very, very wary of what the Russians might be trying to do in terms of collecting, as well as collecting information in that cyber realm, as well as what they might want to do with it.
Is he an adversary? Should we think of Russia as an adversary?
I think in certain areas they are adversaries, yes, but I think also in areas we need to find ways to cooperate with them. Because they do also have a vested interest in trying to bring stability and trying to dismantle these terrorist organizations.
Jumping around the globe, North Korea appears to have tested another nuclear weapon. What is the danger there? Is it that they put it on a missile, or that there's a black market for nuclear material? How should people think about that?
Well, I think North Korea under Kim Jong-un is clearly a concern, and needs to be an international concern, because they continue to develop their nuclear capabilities with the test that was just done last week, but their continued development of ballistic missile capability, marrying up those nuclear devices or warheads with ballistic missiles that can reach great distances, is a cause of concern not just for the East Asia region, but also for the United States.
Saudi Arabia, there's a bill that's been through the House and Senate about allowing suing of Saudi Arabia with respect to 9/11. How does that affect the work you do with Saudi Arabia and intelligence.
Saudi Arabia is one of our closest partners on counterterrorism. I've worked very closely, especially with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Nayef over the last 15 years. And they are truly a good example of how foreign intelligence services can work against these terrorist organizations. And Saudi Arabia faces a very serious threat from terrorism.
Let me, final question. Donald Trump has been briefed now, intelligence briefings. He said that he read through his briefers' body language that they conveyed disapproval of Barack Obama's policies. What do you make of that?
I know the briefers that have been briefing the candidates. They are the quintessential professional intelligence officers. They do their work very well, and they know as professionals that they are to deliver substance. We don't comment on policy. We don't give policy recommendations. So I am fully confident that they comported themselves with the utmost professionalism and demonstrated the real breadth and depth of intelligence capabilities.
All right, Director John Brennan, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, John.